Hey ladies and gentlemen, Mr. T here. I hope you are having an amazing winter break, and if you're not on winter break, then I'm sorry for you, but it means you're back in school, and school is awesome, coming from the teacher. So, today I've been sick the past couple days, that's why I haven't gotten to my 16th Amendment yet, but I'm getting there. We still have 3 days left in this new year, 2.5. Alright, so today though, we are on the 13th Amendment. Now, the 13th Amendment is on anti-slavery, and is the first of 3 Reconstruction amendments, and I'll get to that in a second. But before I get into this, I want to do this little side note. So, slavery, okay? Slavery is probably one of the worst injustices any society can have in their society, okay? Having one human being forcing another human being to do their work without any prior consequences or any law breaking, when you just take them and you own them as property. Anything of that nature is wrong, okay? And American slavery, when we had it in our country, is a black mark on our history, okay? It is wrong in every way, shape, and form, so I am not condoning it in any way. However, I would like to point out that almost every single world power the world has ever seen, almost every major country in human history, empires, monarchies, democracies, republics, every one you could possibly think of, from Rome and Greece and Egypt all the way up to Britain, France, and us, okay? Every one of them has had slaves at one point or time or another. And in some cases, the further back you go, Greece, Rome, that era or time period, the way they treated their slaves made the way we treated our slaves in America look like, kings, okay? So now, like I said, I am not condoning American slavery, but I would like to point out, America is not alone in owning slaves. Almost every major power on earth has had slavery in their country at one point or time or another. So, now that I got that little side history lesson out of the way, getting in. So the 13th Amendment. The 13th Amendment was the first amendment passed in a time period called Reconstruction. Reconstruction lasted from the end of our Civil War, and our Civil War lasted from April of 1861 to be specific, to around May of 1865. Some people have several dates. The surrender of Robert E. Lee, the surrender of Jefferson, the Confederates president, the surrender of General Kirby Smith, the last Confederate general to truly surrender. There's several dates that they put as the end of the Civil War, but it's around April or May of 1865. That's when the Civil War ended. After that, we started a period called Reconstruction, and that lasted until 1877. More specifically, when Rutherford B. Hayes was elected president under, it was a compromise that they did. So, at the end of Reconstruction, we had passed 3 amendments, the 13th, 14th, and 15th. Each one had to do with the former slaves, because we fought the Civil War. It wasn't, slavery was a huge part of it. States' rights was a huge part of it. There was just so many things I'm not going to get into. But slavery was a major part, and halfway through the war, it was the reason we were fighting it, thanks to the Emancipation Proclamation in 1863 by President Abraham Lincoln. However, though, after the war, Abraham Lincoln and many knew that the Emancipation Proclamation probably wouldn't hold up in court because it was issued by the president. It wasn't a solid document. And yes, there's all these, wartime things that you can argue, but in the end, it would have been hard to keep every single slave that was freed out of the hands of its owner, especially once the South started gaining their started gaining statehood back. So we needed a more stable solution to getting rid of slavery. Thus, the 13th Amendment. So the 13th Amendment was passed in 1865. It was the first of the 3 Reconstruction amendments, and it had to do with freeing the slaves. Okay? The 3 amendments we're going to talk about is the first one, the 13th, freed the slaves. The 14th, okay, the next one, gave slaves citizenship. And then the 15th Amendment, the third one in the Reconstruction amendments, it gave them the right to vote. Now, the 13th Amendment is pretty straightforward. It says you can't hold anyone to servitude or anything. You can't force someone to work unless they committed a crime. It does say that if they commit a crime, you can force them to work. But then you have to do due process, and like the Fifth Amendment and all that stuff. So the 13th Amendment is extremely straightforward. So there's not a whole lot on it. It flat out says anti-slave or no slaves. Okay, in constitutional old style legal link or terms, but basically it says you can't have slaves, including indentured servants. And indentured servants, quick sidebar, an indentured servant is someone who kind of signs a contract saying, hey, I'll work 7 years. 7 years is usually the standard. I'll work 7 years as your slave, and then after that 7 years, I'm free. That was kind of how it worked. The 13th Amendment also outlawed that. So like I said, with that being said, there's not a whole lot of like legal mumbo jumbo we can throw in there to like nitpick at it because it's pretty straightforward. There were 2 court cases I found. The first one was Bailey v. Alabama in 1911, and that basically said that you can't be being held to criminal charges if you owe money to someone is against the 13th Amendment because it's basically indentured servitude. So if you owe money to someone, they can still garnish your wages, they can still, take you to court and stuff like that, but you can't have criminal charges, so like thrown in prison and stuff like that, okay? Otherwise, it's considered indentured servitude. Now, the other court case was U.S. v. Kosminski in 1988, and it said that the 13th Amendment wasn't just you're physically in shackles, okay? That's not what it extended beyond that. It extended to also include if you feel that if you're going to do something and you'll be physically threatened by someone else, then that also counts as a form of slavery, okay? If you can't do things because you're threatened because of basically physical threats. The court case had to do with people who were in their mid-20s, but they had like the mental capacity of a 9 or a 10-year-old, and people were forcing them to work because, having the mentality of a 9 or 10-year-old, they were scared thinking that these people were going to do things to them. That's why, they ended up kept working for these people, and the situation was pretty grim, but that's why they kept working for them, and the Supreme Court said, even in forms of physical punishment or physical threats, the 13th Amendment applies as well, and you can't do that either. Alright, so like I said, ladies and gentlemen, there's not a whole lot on the 13th Amendment. It's a super important amendment, and it's arguably one of the most important amendments in the entire Constitution, especially because of the history America's had with slavery. However, as far as the legal side of it, there's not a whole lot on it because the founding fathers, the writers of it made it pretty straightforward, and it's been interpreted to pretty much be a very broad definition to where we can apply it to any form of slavery, whether you're in shackles or you're physically being threatened to work. So that's the 13th Amendment, the first of our Reconstruction era amendments. Stay tuned for the 14th Amendment, which gives slaves citizenship, and at the time it was made, it gave slaves citizenships. Now we use it for other things, and we're going to get into the next video, which I'm going to break into 2 videos. So the 14th Amendment is going to be 2 videos. The 15th will be 1, and then we're on the 16th, and then it's the new year. So stay beautiful, Americans. Hope you like the video. As always, stay tuned for more. Stay beautiful.